You've probably heard about the conflict in Sudan over the last few years.
Sudan.
Is a war being waged on the Sudanese people.
But usually as a footnote to bigger headlines. Yet the scale of Sudan's crisis is staggering. Sudan has the same amount of people displaced as Gaza and the Ukraine combined. This conflict is destabilizing the entire northern African region, with ripple effects far beyond its borders. Sudan's story is complex and deeply rooted in history. In 1956, Sudan gained independence from the Anglo-Egyptian rule, but like many post-colonial nations, its borders were poorly drawn, forcing together very different religious and ethnic groups. A mostly Muslim Arabic north and a predominantly Christian south. In yet another geopolitical cliche, they then discovered oil. This was primarily in the south, fueling decades of conflict. Eventually, the south broke away to form South Sudan, but even within the new borders of Sudan, tensions remain.
Genocide is unfolding. The UN is giving the Sudanese government 30 days to disarm.
Particularly in Darfur, a region with ethnic ties closer to other parts of Africa. The Rapid Support Force rose to power in the unstable Darfur region. They soon evolved into a powerful rival to the National Army, leading to the current conflict with the Sudanese armed forces that started in April 2023. In just 1 year, 8 million people have been displaced here, making it the world's largest displacement crisis. I spent time in refugee camps along the border with Sudan, and every story I heard broke my heart more than I thought it could. The conflict happened so quickly that families were torn apart in one afternoon. A mother from Darfur whose son went out for groceries, and then their neighborhood devolved into gunfire. The mother fled and has been unable to reach her son in the months since. A father was at home with his kids while his wife was at work in Khartoum. When the city collapsed into violence, he had no time to reach his wife. Now he's in a different country with his children and no way of reaching her. Over 25 million people, more than half the population of Sudan, is in urgent need of aid. Many arrive in neighboring countries with nothing, entering places already struggling themselves. South Sudan, for example, ranks near the bottom of the Human Development Index and is now sheltering over 1 million people in an area with blistering heat, lack of water, and even less infrastructure. And South Sudan is just one of the countries dealing with an influx of refugees.
I'm at a spontaneous settlement camp in Adre where over 210,000 refugees from Sudan are currently staying. It's referred to as spontaneous as it's not an official camp, which makes it very difficult for refugees to receive aid.
And as always, children are the most vulnerable, facing risks of armed recruitment, sexual violence, trafficking, and long-term trauma.
For me, I was most struck by the number of unaccompanied children in the camp. There are about 350 unaccompanied children in the camp. And I managed to interview one of the unaccompanied child, saying, I just came here. I saw my father being killed, but I don't know where my mother ran to. I came here with my siblings. The siblings said, we are going back to look for our mother. So he was now alone in the camp.
Nearly 1 million people have arrived into Chad since the war began, and 90% of them are women and children. Most of them arrive alone, and over 3/4 have said that they've either survived or witnessed sexual violence. I met a young girl called Fatima, and she was only 16 years old when she was in school in North Darfur when her village was attacked. Her brother and father were both killed in front of her eyes. And while she was fleeing, she was raped. She had then made it to Chad, but by the time she got there, she was already pregnant, already carrying the weight of the world, and way more than any child, let alone person, should ever have to carry. These aren't rare stories. They're the reality of thousands of women who have been impacted by this conflict in Sudan.
As if life wasn't challenging enough for children and families, the global reduction in aid is making things even worse. Food rations in these refugee camps have been cut by 50% or more.
Before the ration cuts, this is the sample that we call it 100% for one person. The ration to provide based on what they have in their stores.
In many cases, food sits in warehouses, and the money to move it has been cut, leaving people to starve while the food rots. The parties in the conflict are stopping the aid from reaching children and their families. And while the aid isn't getting in, the weapons are. Canada exports over $1 billion of army equipment to this part of the world. And once it's in these countries, it can end up anywhere, including Sudan. It's easy to think of this as a crisis far away, but it's not. Instability here spills into other parts of Africa and the Middle East. This can fuel extremist groups that threaten peace in other parts of the world. And its proximity to the geopolitically important Red Sea means that without stability here, global shipping routes for oil and goods are at risk, similar to what's happened in Yemen. And all of this will continue to lead to an increase of refugee resettlement around the world. And in many countries, the immigration systems are already strained. But most importantly, there's a moral cost that comes from the compounding human cost. When the world fails to respond, as it did in Darfur, we weaken the very international principles meant to protect human rights and prevent atrocities. The crisis in Sudan isn't just about borders and politics. It's about millions of lives torn apart. Parents separated from children, families forced to hunger and fear. And the longer the world stays silent, the worse it gets for Sudan and for us all. This is a test of our global conscience, to act, care, and break the cycle before another generation grows up knowing only war.